Over to you, Laura.
Good evening and welcome to Story Hour. I'm Laura Blackwell, tonight's host. My marvelous co-host, Daniel Marcus, started Story Hour at the beginning of the shelter-in-place orders to help everybody stay connected while we're apart. And so it's just become this virtual campfire for everyone to sit around telling their stories. And in this season, it's the campfire that's holding away the dark shapes behind us in the woods, or maybe inviting them in. I'm never totally clear on that in October, but we're pretty psyched about it. So welcome to those of you returning, and welcome to those of you joining us for the first time. As always, we have two writers reading for their favorite nonprofits. Tonight's readers are Amy Grech and Rachel Unger. If you are fortunate enough to help others during this time, or just like hearing about organizations doing good things, please consider a donation to, or just learning a little more about tonight's featured nonprofits, City Harvest and the San Francisco AIDS Foundation. Amy Grech is reading for City Harvest. City Harvest helped start the food rescue movement in 1982 when a group of New Yorkers saw that New York City had an abundance of excess food, even while a number of residents struggled to feed themselves and their families. City Harvest works with food donors, community food programs, community residents, local businesses, and other community organizations in high-need neighborhoods across New York City to make it easier for residents to access and prepare nutritious food for themselves and their families. You can learn more at cityharvest.org. Rachel Unger is reading for the San Francisco AIDS Foundation. San Francisco AIDS Foundation promotes health, wellness, and social justice for communities most impacted by HIV through sexual health and substance use services, advocacy, and community partnerships. SFAF can help with testing, counseling, support groups, housing subsidies, and other crucial services. You can learn more at sfaf.org. If you're here on Zoom, feel free to leave your camera on. It can be very nice for our readers to see human beings or something that passes for them. October, never sure. Chime in on the text chat if you like. If you are joining us on Facebook, thank you so much, but please be aware that we may not be seeing your messages in real time. And usually we decide ahead of time who's reading first, but I neglected to take care of that this time. So how about we defer to the alphabet and start with Amy Grech? Does that work?
Yes,
all right.
For me.
All right, then I will introduce you. I will do this part properly. Amy Grech has sold over 100 stories to various anthologies and magazines, including A New York State of Fright, Apex Magazine, Dead Harvest, Flashes of Hope, Gorefest, Hell's Heart, Hell's Highway, Hell's Mall, Needle Magazine, Punk Noir Magazine, Scare You to Sleep, Tales from the Canyons of the Damned, Tales from the Lake Volume 3, The One That Got Away, Thriller Magazine, and many others that probably just don't have quite such interesting names. That's me editorializing. She has a poem forthcoming in the Under Her Skin anthology. Amy is an active member of the Horror Writers Association and the International Thriller Writers and lives in New York. You can connect with her on Twitter at Amy Grech. That's Grech. Actually, that's Amy_Grech. Or visit her website, crimsonscreams.com. Amy, welcome.
Thank you, Laura. I'm going to be reading an excerpt from my story, Cold Comfort, in the One That Got Away anthology. And I wanted to preface it by saying the story contains some foul language, some sex, and some violence. So if anyone in the audience, our virtual audience, has kiddies nearby, they might want to put their kiddos to bed or bring them to another room to protect their delicate constitutions. So here we go. Cold Comfort. Jack Masick woke with a start and flinched when he felt someone resting next to him on the spacious bed in the strange bedroom. Everything here had a place, including him. He waited anxiously for his eyes to adjust to the darkness while he tried to make sense of it all. Jack looked around and groaned when he realized where he was. Another strange woman's apartment, much larger and neater than his cramped studio. Waking up in strange places next to women he hardly knew had become a kinky rut, purely spontaneous, especially if he'd been drinking. He thought for a moment, struggling to recall the woman's name. Lately, they'd become a random jumble of desire, fueled by his insatiable libido. A moment later, it came to him, Sadie O'Grady. It fit her perfectly given her bright red hair and wild temperament. Such an unusual combination of remarkable beauty and unbridled passion fascinated him and left him helpless against her charms. They met at Mango's, a tropical bar nearby. Hazy smoke lingered, dense and brooding, creating a hypnotic ambiance. Lou Reed crooned sweetly in the background. Lust filled the tight space, oozing across the bar like liquid gold, yearning to be tasted. Jack drank in the crowd, admiring the bevy of beauties ripe for the picking, dressed in alluring outfits that clung in all the right places, accentuating choice cleavage and other valuable assets. That's when he caught a glint of metal out of the corner of his eye and snapped out of his daze long enough to remember his wedding ring, a simple silver band on his right ring finger weighing him down. He slipped it off discreetly. Jack held it tightly in his palm for a minute, felt it grow warm before slipping it into his pants pocket. He should have stopped wearing it by now, with Mary gone for 6 months, but her hasty departure still gnawed at him, a bone of contention. He had been drinking apricot sours, numbing the pain, starting his third glass, staring at his first glass, trying to decide if it was half empty or half full, when she appeared, an unanswered prayer, and sauntered over to the only empty bar stool left in the place like she owned it. Her perfume, sweet and light like lilacs, captivated his senses, reminding him of happier days. The girl wore an emerald dress that left little to the imagination. One look at her and he knew he wouldn't be going home to his lonely studio apartment chock full of bad memories. You look thirsty. Jack rested his foot on the lower rung of the bar stool and lost himself in her intense green eyes. What are you drinking? He asked, slurring his words. Nothing yet. I just got here. She rubbed his leg with the tip of her shoe and watched him shudder. I have a girlfriend. He shoved her away and frowned apologetically. Then why isn't she here? Lovers quarrel? No, Amy had to work tonight, so I decided to go out. I need to clear my head. I've got too much on my mind lately. He stared at his half-empty glass. Almost time for a refill. I'm glad you came. She ran her fingers across the bar. Make yourself useful. Buy me a drink, if you insist. Jack smiled, looked her over, and forgot about Amy for a while. Pick your poison. A zombie, she whispered, her breath hot and quick in his ear. I could just eat you up. The girl licked her pink lips slowly while he watched. Is that a threat or a promise? He rested his hand on his chin. You'll soon find out. She twirled a lock of curly red hair. What's your name, sweet thing? Jack gasped, polished off his drink for courage, and slammed his empty glass down on the bar. Jack Masick. He leaned forward and extended a large bony hand. She shook it. The pleasure's all mine. Sadie gave his hand a sudden bone-crushing squeeze. He winced and felt his knuckles pop under the strain. Wow, that's quite a grip you've got there. You caught me by surprise. Jack bit his lip, stifling a scream. Thanks. I work out. A single girl's got to protect herself. This is a tough town. It will swallow you whole if you aren't careful. Sadie raised his hand and let her eyes wander slowly up and down his slender physique. What's a cute young guy like you doing in a dive like this? There's a first, he thought, amused by her daring overture. It's ladies' night, Jack chuckled. I'm here to buy drinks for lovely ladies like you. She shook her finger at him. I doubt your girlfriend would approve. I promised not to tell. Sadie folded her arms. Have you bought anyone drinks yet? You're the first girl to pique my interest. He waved the burly bartender over and ordered a zombie for her and another apricot sour for himself. Amy would have a fit if she knew I was here. Jack winked. You've got spunk and you're brutally honest. You're a rare find. Amy is a very lucky girl. Sadie grinned. She takes me for granted. Jack blushed and took a final swig of his apricot sour. Where do you live? You're not East Side material, I can tell. You're too rough around the edges. He examined his throbbing hand and found no harm done. I'm from the West Side. I haven't figured out how to blend in. Maybe you could teach me. I'm a fast learner. I'd be glad to show you the ropes for a price. Her foot inched higher, grazing his thigh. Jack shivered in anticipation. Name it. Your pride. Can you handle that, Jack? Sadie shrugged. He snickered, relieved. Sure, I've got plenty to spare. Consider yourself lucky. I'm feeling generous tonight. It's a rare occurrence. She ran her fingers across the bar. What brings you to this side of town? Looking for someone new? He felt the crotch of his jeans tighten instantly. Maybe if the right girl comes along. Am I the right girl? She placed her hand between her plump breasts and watched his dark blue eyes settle there. Absolutely. Jack smirked, raised his glass, and polished off his drink. This half of the city seemed less crazed. Sadie nodded. It is, and that makes it really dull if you ask me. A girl has to search hard for excitement. Isn't it worth the extra effort? He raised his eyebrows. She shrugged. Sometimes. Jack looked her up and down. You look luscious. Sadie licked her lips again. Are you hungry? I'm ravenous. He nodded, thrilled by dumb luck. God, you're gorgeous. She laughed long and hard. God has nothing to do with it. Fair enough. Jack smiled expectantly. The bartender set their drinks down on the bar. Jack handed him a 20 and a 10 from his tattered wallet. Sadie hoisted her enormous glass. Here's to chance encounters. I'll drink to that. He raised his glass, spilling some on the bar. She plucked the cherry from the zombie and lowered it into her mouth slowly. Intrigued, Jack looked on. What are you up to later tonight? He gulped down the rest of his apricot sour and dabbed his mouth with the cocktail napkin. She drank her zombie. That depends. On what? Jack stared at her intently. What you have to offer, Sadie winked. The sumptuous shape beside him stirred in the darkness, and his cock betrayed him once more. Mary? No, it couldn't be. Groggy, Jack opened his eyes and studied the woman laying beside him, disappointed to discover she wasn't his wife, Mary. No, it was only Sadie, his latest conquest, another momentary lapse of reason. Glad you're finally up. I wondered when you were going to come around. Sadie wrapped her arms around him and squeezed. You passed out. I guess I got carried away. I get lost in the moment. Sometimes I don't know my own strength. He draped an arm over her shoulder. Yeah, you really wore me out. You're amazing. You bring out the best in me. She nuzzled his neck. Jack felt his soft skin bruise under the stain. Tomorrow he'd look like someone who'd gone 6 rounds in a prize fight and lost. Hey, Jack, know what I love about you? Sadie wrapped her arms around him and held him tight. Let me guess, is it my boyish charm? It's my best feature. Jack squirmed, trying to get comfortable, but failing miserably. The more he moved, the harder she squeezed, just to let him know that, ready or not, he belonged to her now. Her nimble fingers touched his thick blonde hair, caressed his soft face, his long neck, his hairy chest, his huge heart-on, his firm ass. No, everything. You're the perfect fit. I can't decide what I love more, your angelic face, your stunning eyes, your luscious lips, your perky breasts, or your long legs. With trembling fingers, he traced her sculpted figure, relishing each moment, every fantastic sensation. Sadie clasped his hands in hers and positioned him underneath her. He gasped and braced himself for another round. She pressed her lips against his eager ones, practically smothering him. Panting, he came up for air. Are you okay? She released him. Yeah, just try to go easy on me. I bruise easily like a peach. Jack ran his fingers through his hair and rubbed his eyes. Your skin is soft. Sadie kissed his damp forehead. I'll try to be gentle, but I make no guarantees. You don't want to break me, do you? He sank deeper into the bed. I promise to handle you with care, she laughed, crossing her heart. I wouldn't want you to end up in the hospital just because I'm kinky in bed. Slowly, Sadie slipped out of her peach teddy and matching panties. Then she pulled down his dark blue boxers, tossing them in a corner. She mounted him and wrapped her arms around him. Sadie's sensuality surged through him, delivering a powerful jolt that shocked him to the core. Jack ran his fingers across her muscular shoulders and squeezed her breasts. He trembled, scarcely able to keep up with her intense pelvic thrusts. Jack fought to stay conscious in the thick of it all, but it wasn't easy, and he faded fast. When he came to the next morning, dazed and confused, his bony wrists were tied tightly to the bedpost with coarse ropes digging into his tender flesh, leaving vicious mementos. Sadie loomed above him, naked and menacing. Oh, good, you're awake. For a while, I didn't think you were going to make it. Eyes wide, Jack stared at her while he tried to move his arms and found them frozen in place. Why did you tie me to the bed, Sadie? It's a bit drastic, don't you think? Were you afraid I was going to leave it in the middle of the night? I wouldn't dream of it. Let's just say you were fit to be tied. She laughed. Do you have a death wish? Should I? He taunted. Sadie pouted. You already know the answer. You've done this before. It's an elaborate scheme to humiliate me. Jack struggled against his restraints. Every touch, every sensation Sadie delivered set him off like a live wire. The bed creaked under his weight, demanding a brief reprieve. Don't take it personally. After the workout I gave you, I knew you'd sleep soundly. I wanted to stress the binding nature of last night's get-together. She came closer and he steeled himself for her wrath. What are you talking about? We just fucked. I wouldn't mind another turn. It was purely physical, really intense, but there wasn't an emotional connection, at least not for me. You're definitely a bit more extreme than I'm used to. Hey, I'm not complaining. You really know how to rock my world, but I'm already in a relationship. I told you that last night at the bar. I saw an opportunity to have some fun and took it. You know, a harmless fling. Since when is that a crime? Jack ogled her breast, wanting desperately to taste her plump nipples. In his haste, he bit his tongue, tasting his own coppery blood instead. Flings are never harmless, believe me, I know. They can get messy, especially if someone gets careless. I think I'll introduce myself to Amy. I'll make it a happy coincidence. Would you like that, Jack? You wouldn't dare. He shook his head. Don't threaten me, Sadie, or Amy will make you regret the day you met me. Really? I find that hard to believe. What could Amy possibly do that would be so terrible? She rolled her eyes. You have no idea. Jack writhed on the bed, trying desperately to break the ties that bound him. For your sake, I hope you never find out. Consider yourself warned. And I'll stop there.
Thank you, Amy. I think you have tied our story hour record for content warnings.
Oh, have I? Is that a good thing?
So.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I think that's a matter of what you like, but I think
Okay,
I don't see anything wrong with it at all.
right on.
But that's not the end of the story.
No, it's a longer story. It takes place in New York City. Rope figures into the ending of the story. The main character, Sadie, loves to walk around Central Park. Jack is grieving his wife's loss. She was hit by a hit and run driver, a cab, in the winter in New York City. And I don't want to give away the ending. People can get it on Amazon and all the usual suspects, even at Walmart.
But we want the ending, Amy.
Oh, I didn't know that was a requisite of reading on. Do you really want me to skip to the ending?
What do we think? Should we just ask her to read a few more minutes until she's filled a little more space, or should we ask her to skip to the end? I don't know what these thumbs are for.
Okay, hold on. Let me find the end because it's a longer story of mine. Let's see. So I didn't touch on it yet in the story, but Amy is a police officer. She's
okay.
NYPD.
So Amy's real. See, I wasn't sure about Amy being real.
Oh no, this is all fiction, but her character. I mean, I didn't reveal her profession.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the inspiration for the story was I wrote it when I first moved to New York City in my 20s, and I was grieving the fact that a boyfriend of mine in college who I loved and thought would marry me didn't feel the same way, and he liked to be dominated in the bedroom, and so I never tied him up, but this was my way of grieving that the loss of that relationship in my own twisted way. Do people want me to read the end, or I haven't been looking at the chat because I've been reading.
Sure.
Yeah, we like closure.
Oh, I'm sorry did I miss that in the guidelines for reading?
Oh, no, it's all right. It's fine. Don't worry. It's just we have a little more time and
okay.
And we're eager for more.
All right. So do I have time to read? How many pages do I have time to read from?
How many did you read, or did you just read?
Let's see, about 7 or 8.
I'd say you probably have time for 2 or 3.
Okay, so let me just jump to the end.
This is kind of fun. We haven't done this before.
Yeah, okay, cool. All right, so here we go. Let's see. Okay, so on cue, Amy emerged from the snowy night. Her fiery red hair whipped in the wind. An enormous black steed, a black stallion, blocked Sadie's passage. You're just in time, Amy. Sadie tried to kill me. Jack worked the knot loose and tossed the rope on the ground. Just to sort of, since I skipped ahead. So Sadie tried to hang Jack from a tree in Central Park. And then Amy, burst on the scene. So just a little setup there. Okay. So Sadie backed away. Jack defied me. Now he must accept the consequences. He needs discipline, no doubt, a trait you're obviously lacking. Amy dismounted and tackled the woman clad in black. She landed on top of her. Stunned, Jack watched them obliterate the pristine powder. Amy pinned Sadie down quickly and cuffed her. Hey, these cuffs are too tight, Sadie whined. You're in no position to complain, Sadie. I'm arresting you. Amy pulled her roughly to her feet. Why? I haven't done anything wrong. Sadie spat in Amy's face. The cop wiped her cheek with the back of her hand. Sadie shivered. Amused, Jack wondered if fear or the chill in the air finally got to her. How do you explain that rope that's tied around his neck? She placed her hands on her hips. I'm charging you with attempted murder. Jack nodded. I can't wait to hear this. This is kind of embarrassing, but sometimes Jack likes to be led around on a leash. Sadie raised her eyebrows. Does that surprise you? He buried his face in his hands. Not really. I handcuff him to a different piece of furniture every night while we fuck, Amy nudged Jack. There's just one problem. As far as I can tell, you didn't have him on a leash, and you deliberately tied a rope complete with the noose around his neck so tightly. Jack has rope burn. That's weapon and motive. You're very clever, Sadie clapped. Her manacled hands clinked rhythmically. Congratulations, you win the grand prize. How does it feel? I'm bringing you down to the station. I'm sure Jack wants to press charges. I know I would. Amy started to lead Sadie away. Hold on, I've got a better idea. Let the punishment fit the crime. Jack shook his head. Let's settle this right here, right now. Amy turned around. What did you have in mind, Jack? Sadie tried to wiggle out of the cuffs. He rubbed his hands together, anxious to get down to business. You'll see soon enough. Follow me. Jack tugged on her muscular arms. Come on, Sadie. I've got a surprise for you. She shot him a dirty look. Where are you taking me? Someplace safe. Jack and Amy brought Sadie. He held one arm and she held the other over to a secluded section of the park where they wouldn't be disturbed. He leaned over to whisper in her ear. What's the matter? Don't you trust me, Sadie? Sadie gave him the finger. Jack leered at her. Amy became Sadie's shadow, ready to pounce, billy club in hand, in case she decided to bolt. He paused in front of the ladder, resting against a lamppost, a lucky find, and grabbed it. Amy, give me a hand, Jack grunted. Amy kept a firm grip on Sadie. Sure, why don't you hold the ladder and I'll keep Sadie out of harm's way, she winked. Sadie glowered at Amy. Sounds like a plan. Jack scooped the rope Sadie wrapped around his neck out of the snow, felt damp and rigid between his fingers. His dried blood caked the noose. He slung it over his shoulder and closed in on Sadie. She backed right into Amy, who whacked her shoulder with the club. Sadie threw a punch at Amy and came up short. Now it's time to bear the burden of guilt. Try this on for size. He slipped the rope around Sadie's long neck and cinched it tight. Her hands flew up and yanked, trying desperately to loosen it. Sadie's breath became a series of frantic gasps and her cheeks turned bright red. Jack gave the rope a good tug and led her over to the nearest tree. You're a dangerous woman, Sadie, but something tells me no one will miss you when you're gone. You have no idea, she muttered, her voice raspy. She continued to wheeze, a steady stream of white breath appeared in front of her. Jack watched her carefully while he positioned the ladder against the mighty oak. Up you go. Sadie regarded him with pleading eyes. Do I have a choice? Amy drew her pistol and cocked it. You can climb the ladder or I can shoot you right where you stand. Pick your poison. Slowly, silently, Sadie climbed the ladder. Metal rungs made her chapped hands numb, and handcuffs restricted her movements. She struggled to keep her grip. Jack waited until she reached the top and stood above the lowest branch. Then he did something Sadie never expected. He pulled the ladder out from beneath the tree and set it up next to the first one. He scaled it quickly like a cat and tied the other end of the rope in a hangman's noose around the branch. The branch should do the job quite nicely, he grinned. Amy nodded approvingly. Well, it's been real. I'd love to hang around. This is supposed to look like a suicide. Jack tested the knot to make sure it would hold Sadie's weight. Do you have any last words? Sadie balled her hands into fists. Yeah, fuck off. Amy kicked the ladder out from underneath Sadie and shoved her. Jack watched a morbid fascination as Sadie's body twitched while she dangled in midair until her face turned the perfect shade of green. The end.
See, now we got some closure.
Yes.
Definite finality.
You're not in a bind anymore, pun intended.
But man, that was not a very good cop. on the whole upholding the law.
No, there are dirty cops in New York City. I don't know any of them personally,
Really?
but I read stories. Oh, yes.
Oh, I think I may have heard a mention of that before.
Yeah, some of them do drugs. Some of them, they take stuff out of the evidence room, whether it's a gun or drugs or money. And yeah.
I've always watched Bad Lieutenant as kind of a documentary, actually. So
Mm.
Yeah, exactly.
I was kind of rooting for Sadie at the end. I'm like, go ahead, be the undead I thought you were at the beginning.
Oh,
Come
really?
on,
Well,
get
she
out
had
of
to go
this.
down. She had to go down. Yeah.
All right, sequel forthcoming, perhaps.
Perhaps, yes. It's not in the works yet, but you never know.
Due to popular demand.
Yeah, sure.
Wow, I have to sort of shake my head to clear it because that was really quite thrilling.
Thank you.
We always
you enjoyed
need
it.
a minute. We always need a moment between the two
Yeah,
stories.
you need like a palate cleanser, right?
Yes, really.
A brain cleanser.
A story fills your brain the same way a novel does, and it just sort of lives with you. So you have to just take a minute to let it settle and prepare yourself for another one. And I know that we have two more great ones coming because Rachel told me she's reading two, and her stories are always great.
Awesome.
And so here we are. Rachel Unger thinks that now is an excellent time for all of us to be kind to each other. This fall, she has stories coming out in 34 Orchard, as well as 4 anthologies, including the Gothic anthology Insomnia from Tenebris Press. I backed that Kickstarter so soon. Yes? Okay, awesome. You can find links to her work online at fictionbuffet.com. Rachel, welcome.
Thank you.
I think it's almost exactly a year since the first time you were on Story Hour.
Pretty much. I think I looked, it was the last reading of October last time. So yeah, I'm glad to be back. This is a lot of fun.
Wonderful to have you back with a new reading partner and everything. So what have you got for us?
I have 2 stories tonight. They're both, so the first one I'm going to call sort of like the cosmic horror bedtime story, kind of. It's called Inheritance. I'll never live by the sea again. We were a scavenger family, we were. Tide poolers, pickers, however you want to call it. We waited until the tide was safely out, and then we went to bag up what the ocean left behind. Respectable, as such things go. Sometimes the things the sea spat out were valuable. Glass and leavings from ships. Sometimes only fish, but we all knew by then that eating them meant a nasty death. The fish we left for the water to take back. Once an entire chest floated in, caught on a sandbar for us to find in the morning. It were a good haul that day. We didn't bother with the chest, but the shirts and metal inside were worth 2 months of food. We emptied it as fast as we could run the contents back to the house, so that there would still be time to pick over the flats before the tide came in. We learned young to judge the time and to read the tide charts. We were drilled on how to read the hours of the sun, even on a cloudy day. Misremembering the chart resulted in a missed meal at the very least. No one ever stayed on the beach or the flats once the tide turned. Worth more than your life to do that. Once we were old enough, we were shown why. Mother showed Hiram and me the same morning. It was our birthday. A likely tide pool held one of the sea's creatures, and she took us out to look. No, I'll not tell you. You don't need to know. Oh, fine. Imagine too many openings, like gills or like eyes. You could tell it was watching you. Somehow wet looking, even though it had been marooned above water for hours. The way it moved. Wrong. Whatever you're thinking, know that it's worse. I think it was trying to talk. Not everyone can bear seeing them. Hiram vanished a few days after we'd been taken to the tide pools to see. It happens that way sometimes. Another family, their son came home and drowned himself in a pot of water. stuck his head under and inhaled until he couldn't anymore. He put salt in it first. The rest of us got on with things. You'd go out as a family, the sky the color of lead above, and the water a smudge of lead in the distance. It never mattered the time of year. The sand was always hard, cold, and somehow sharp underfoot. The flats covered a lot of ground. The bay had the largest tidal range of anywhere, so we had to work together to cover it. I remember the smell of the salt, the smell of the flats, like mud, blood too, and rotting things. The sea stained the ground like ink wherever it could reach, and that was probably part of the reek too. I'll die happy if I never smell it again. That isn't to say there weren't some who craved the sea. There were sailors. Mad as your father were, Mother used to say. The sailors all had a strange look to them. Not dead in the eye, but somehow wrong. They were hard. Everyone on the flats learned young to avoid them. The boats would come in up on what remained of their wheels, and you could hear the grinding clank of the motor keeping the wheels moving. No, there weren't any piers. No piers, no pilings, nothing wood. Whatever those things were, they ate wood. Or some of them did, anyway. The wheels meant the boats that made it back to shore could be pulled entirely out of the water. Yes, some of the boats were wood. I told you, they were mad. Sometimes the ships would make it up onto the beach. Sometimes the boats wouldn't make it and get hauled back into the sea instead. Sometimes the sailors would throw down ropes and everyone nearby would help drag the vessel up so it could be repaired. The sailors would come down off the ships, swaying from side to side. Some never stopped grinning. Some never spoke. They'd all fight if given half a chance. They brought trade, but we were all of us glad when they left again. We kept to ourselves, and they came and went. One autumn, a ship barely made it in. Something was clinging to the back, chewing furiously at rudder and any sailor it could drag down. None of us came near until the creature gave up and slid back under the water. The sailors took the ship the rest of the way past the tide line marker on their own. Turning to head back to the house, I heard one of them call out, "Miriam?" It was like looking at a mirror. Hiram standing there, my age now, not a little boy. Lean and tall and wrapped in stained rags with that light in his eyes that all sailors had. A pair of gloves was half tucked in his pocket. They were the kind made of woven metal so that you could use a knife without cutting yourself. I didn't know whether to run or approach, but he decided for us both. His grip around me was almost too tight. I knew it was time to come home, he said, and walked with me back to the house. Mother didn't know what to do either. He hugged her as well. As the light faded, we all came in from the beach. He told us stories of where he'd been. The littles from other tide pooler families came over and gathered close, even the ones old enough to know better. He stayed close to me, kept reaching out and to touch in a way that should have felt affectionate. He'd stowed away years ago, only discovered once they were out in the depths. The other sailors didn't care. He could stay if he worked. He learned how to climb a line and service the motor, how to fight. His hands were tough and looked knotted as the rope he'd learned to use. He started to talk about the sea creatures, and Mother let him get only so far before reminding him some were too young to hear. He laughed then, though the rough sound bore more of gulls screaming than humor. The children drew back. We could all hear the water coming in with the dark. Mother shrugged and said it were about time to start dinner. The children slowly trickled out, heading landward of our house to reach their own. I can contribute, Hiram grinned, teeth catching what little light there was. At Mother's surprised expression, he stood and brought over his canvas bag. It was lumpy, somehow. It had lain in a corner as he talked, and I'm not sure what I expected him to pull out of it. We'd been low on canned meat, and I suppose I'd hoped for that. He played with his gloves as he talked, and he put them on then. It had too many eyes, and it came out squelching and squalling. The smell of it in the closed space. There was no air in the house with it there. Suddenly the water seemed very loud, very close. Hiram laughed again. What do you think we all eat out in the depths? He asked. You learn to like the flavor. Hiram held it in his clenched metal fist and ignored it to watch us. I had seen what the creatures could do, given the chance. I intended to live. Get that out of here, I demanded. What's wrong with you, bringing that on land? It belongs in the water. That laugh, like breaking glass. Some things do, he agreed. Things like me. He was so fast. He had my wrist in his other gloved hand before I knew it. Things like you, too. We came from the womb together. We're the same, you and I. He dragged me to the door and then out into the twilight. All the while, the creature in his hand shrieked. It was louder than the booming of the waves, louder than my demands. Hiram's voice crested over it all. You'll see. It's beautiful out there. You'll thrive as I did. You just need to get out into the deeps. You just need to feel the sea on your skin and in your lungs. That mad light in his eyes rivaled the stars. I should have heeded that light when he came off the ship. Should have run then. With every step, we came closer to the water. This late into the evening, it looked like ink. The wind scoured along from the far end of the beach, what little beach was left. His grip was tight as kelp and just as impossible to undo. I tried anyway, hurled words he didn't hear and pulled for all I was worth. I remember the dirty churn of the water spilling around his ankles when the creature got loose and went for his face. All those openings, not gills, not eyes, mouths. His hand loosened for a moment and I eeled free. There was a slap of water on my calf and half my pant leg was torn away. How'd the water come in so fast? I ran up the narrowing sand for the high tide line, Hiram's screams behind me. The water took one of my shoes. My breath I kept, but barely. When I turned, 20 feet above the marker, he was knee-deep in the water. One of the other things held his arms, the little one that he'd brought for supper. It was feeding on him. It left him air to breathe, to scream. It peeled off chunks of his skin and then started on the flesh underneath. It took an eye. It sang the entire time. I never looked back after that. I stumbled past the glow of other windows, the shrieks fading into the roar of the tide as I went. My leg froze and burned alternately, which I also tried to put behind me. I had to let Mother know that the sea hadn't taken me too. I had to let her know that Hiram was gone, for good this time. I would figure out how or if to grieve later. She met me at the door, cleaver at the ready. She didn't want to let me in, not after she saw my leg and how the sea had marked me. You'll not stay then, she said, and it wasn't a question. She never let me out of her sight as I bathed my leg in fresh water, kept her hand on a knife as I packed. She softened for a moment as I stepped through the door for the last time. Go inland, she said. Has less of a hold that way, I've heard. I didn't ask how she knew. I was away before daybreak. I kept moving until the whisper of the sea was only in my head, until that salt reek wasn't in my nostrils. Then I kept going for good measure. In a way, I suppose the sea had taken me. I'll never go back. I'll never forget how it took him apart in the twilight. I'll never forget how he sounded. Stop asking. I'll not tell you. You're as mad as your uncle were. Both of you. So I have another one. It's much shorter, but I feel like I should mention. I'm very fond of it. It's my first paid publication. It was in Disturbed Digest in 2017, and I love it to pieces, this one that I'm about to read. But it's fairly emotional, and it does have child death in it. And I know that can be very upsetting. So if that will bother you, perhaps you would like to call it a night at this point.
Thank you for the warning, but I say bring it on. But
Okay.
please, folks out there, heed the admonition.
Okay. All right. This one is called And Straight On Till Morning. The world ended a month after Johnny died, and Rosemary didn't care. Her baby boy, her heart, her life was gone. What care had she for zombies? The world could spin away into dust. She was finding all sorts of hidden worsts now that he was gone. The car accident, not being able to get to him, the doctor at the hospital telling her what she already knew, seeing another child from behind with similar coloring and build, knowing it wasn't her Johnny. Worsts. She went into his room to touch his toys just one last time and found the worst of the worsts. She'd looked at his blocks, at his jammies laid out across the bottom of the bed. She looked at his baseball cap, his small shoes. His whole life was here. How could he not be here? Everything he needed was in this room. She remembered that the Egyptians used to bury people with everything they needed, with food, with clothes, with servants. And it was then Rosemary realized she hadn't buried Johnny with his binky. She'd buried him all alone without it. It was the worst thing she'd ever done. She picked it up, smoothing it with trembling hands. She would bring it to him, this blanket that he'd slept with every night. For good measure, she also took his stuffed turtle and the old glowworm toy that had been hers when she was a child. Clutching them to her chest, she hurried downstairs. She'd barely noticed the drive to the graveyard past the edge of town. She avoided crashed cars and moving bodies, and she held the binky on her lap the whole way. Her shoes slipped a little in the fresh mud, but she kept the precious things clean. She reached his grave and stopped. "Hi, Johnny," she said in a husky voice. "Mommy loves you, and she's very sorry that she forgot something so important." The wind blew, but there was no other answer. Rosemary scrubbed a cheek with the back of an impatient hand. How could he sleep without his binky? What had she been thinking? A crack crept through the soil in the ground in front of her. She stripped off her jacket, dropped the toys on it, and helped to move the earth aside. She was so grateful that she'd chosen against the marble casket. Johnny emerged as blue as he'd been when she gave birth to him, his gray eyes unfocused. Her baby boy. She was so proud of him. Clearing her throat, she said, "Okay, sweetie, time for bed. Here's your binky." She held out the soft, fuzzy fabric and waited. He tottered a step forward, one small hand outstretched. His fist closed on the blanket, tugging it from her grip. He brought it to his face. "There you go," she soothed. "There's my sleepy boy." Johnny snuffled at the blanket, and her heart broke again at the sound. Then, holding his fist to his chin, he turned and crawled back into the grave. She sang to him, the lullaby she'd made up when he was still just a baby. She sang until his eyes closed. She sat back on her heels, wiping muddy hands across her cheeks again. She heard them approaching from behind and turned. 2 little boys. One was Johnny's age, one a bit older. Their milky eyes were trained on her, their hands outstretched. She handed the turtle to the larger one and the glowworm to the smaller of the 2. She turned it on first so he would have light while he slept. "All right," Rosemary said briskly. "Let's get you 2 to bed. Come on." She stood and took each of them by the hand, not holding a toy. "Will you show me where your bed is?" she asked. They walked down the rows, following their tiny footprints in the mud. She tucked them into their graves, smoothing a hand over the youngest boy's hair. She read their names from their tombstones and told them that she loved them. When their eyes closed, she sat back again. Raising her head, she looked across the expanse of the children's graveyard. "Oh," she said in a small voice. She took the shovel from the caretaker's shed and tenderly covered up 3 bodies. Then she took her car back into town. Fortunately, the toy store was next to a baby store. She would only have to make 1 trip. Even better, there was a large van parked at the loading dock in back. She found the keys above the visor. Rosemary loaded the van with blankies and teddies. She carried armload after armload of kitties, monkeys, bunnies, and dollies. She grabbed every stuffed dinosaur she could find. She drove back to the children's graveyard, opened the back of the van, and went to work. One by one, she pressed binkies into the hands of her small charges. There were so many. She kept trying until she found the right binky for each child, pressing toy after toy into their clutching fingers. She sang lullabies, and she stroked little brows, and she told them all that she loved them. Sometimes they mouthed her a little if she wasn't quick, like puppies themselves, really. They pulled at the muddied tatters of her shirt in their eagerness. She forgot to eat most days, but it didn't matter. It wasn't as though the children minded that her collarbone was starting to stand out, that she could see the outline of bones in her forearms, that she was a little more ragged than usual. She tucked them into bed and pulled the dirt over their sleeping heads. She could eat later. There were so many of them that had to be looked after. From behind one day, she heard approaching steps. They were louder than she expected, heavier. A teenager? Rosemary frowned as she turned. The man facing her said, "Hello, little mother." He was well armed, as were the 2 people flanking him. Rosemary gaped at him. For a moment, she blanked on what to say. It had been days since she'd seen any of the living. Tentatively, she held out a hand, rising from her crouch. The shotgun blast was very loud. It woke the children.
Oh, my.
Thank you.
Wow.
That was lovely.
Thank you.
That story went in one of the directions I thought it would, and then a few more. What a night, Daniel.
Yeah, seriously. Great.
Very October, but very contrasting stories.
Mm-hmm.
Amy got our blood pumping, and Rachel just broke my heart.
Yeah, me too, man.
I think you hid a few of the pieces. Can I have those back?
You'll just have
Yeah.
to grow those back in time, Laura. That's how it works.
Yeah, that last story, Rachel, all the feels. Wow.
Yay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great October stories. Thank you, folks.
But you were both very right to do the content warnings, and I really appreciate your doing those.
Mm-hmm,
And Amy,
definitely.
thank you for being such a good sport about being asked to change your performance on the fly. You did really well with that, and I really appreciate your doing that to help us with our format of giving people whole stories to tuck themselves
Sure.
in.
And if I missed that in our correspondence beforehand, that was my bad.
Well, don't worry about it for a second. It
All right.
worked out great.
Yeah, it worked out really well.
Fun. It's
Yeah.
fun. We got it done. Yeah.
Yeah, we had fun. So
Good.
thank you both
Glad.
so much. This has really been another delightful story hour. I'm having so much fun with this October with all these spooky stories.
Excellent.
And next week, we're going to have our final October story hour for 2021 with Cassandra Kaw and Richard Kadri reading.
Oh, wow.
So that's another good one to tune in for.
Mhm.
And the week after that, we may be having some changes that may not be quite so visible to you, except that Daniel is going to be off improving himself for a little while. He's going to be taking a class. So
Oh.
we will not see Daniel for most of November and December. You will instead be stuck with me and Cliff Winnig, who has kindly volunteered to step up and help us out. So shouldn't be any big changes, but it might be a good idea to keep an eye on storyhour2020.com for any updates in case anything does change. And it's a good place to go anyway, because you can go there to see who the next readers are going to be. And you can always go to Facebook page for Story Hour and watch all of the story hours you've missed, or watch this one another few dozen times. You know, all of the above, really. You're welcome to do all of that. And so thank you so much, Amy, Rachel. This has been a lovely evening. And thank you, Daniel, for bringing us Story Hour in the first place and making each one so special. And all of you who joined us tonight and all of you who are watching later, thank you. Thank you for being part of Story Hour and helping us in spinning the fictive dream. Good night.
Good night, everybody.